What's going on, SE Nation? Welcome back to another Amazon AWS Solution Architect Associate journey. Today we're covering IAM as I understand it. So this is always as I understand it. I am trying to learn it to become better at it. So if I misspeak, well, one for one, always double check what I say. I'll leave links to almost everything that I talk about in the blog post that I put. By the way, if you haven't like subscribe to the YouTube channel and you're finding these useful, it is useful to me and to others to find my YouTube channel. If you do subscribe, if you do like, if you do share. And when I publish one video every Thursday right now for the last 3 Thursdays about AWS, but every Sunday I publish more about just sales engineering in general. And that's how I think about AWS. Like, what is it for? What are we talking about this? Who cares? Right? And so what and who cares? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves all the time when we're doing sales engineering. So today we're going to be talking about IAM. Now, some of you may be wondering, what does IAM even mean? Well, IAM stands for, that's supposed to be an M, identity, access, and management. Basically, you're managing who has access to AWS through their identity, I guess, if you want to link all these. So, I mean, from a business perspective, AWS is pretty much solving a problem that they created, because way back when, like when you had data centers in premises, like let's say this is one big company, right? Boom, boom. You had a small area here that's a data center, or it could be a big area, I don't know. It's people who worked here, who had the IP addresses, who had the usernames and passwords, would be able to access the servers where you're deploying these services, whether it's a web app, whether it's a database, whatever. They'd be able to access this. But now everything's in the cloud. Yes, this is supposed to be a cloud, and the cloud basically has data centers. And everybody out here, like I am doing this on my own computer in my own house. That's my house, not which I'm drawing. And now I have access to this. So we need to limit who has access to what, in short, or in long. So that's the problem that they're trying to solve. It's not solving a business problem in the sense that we're solving this for the customer, but because we're providing a solution for the customer where we're providing cloud-based infrastructure, we need to make sure that not everybody has access to that. So we're creating IAM. Right? Otherwise, anybody can access anything. And let's say I run VDSEs. I have a AWS account, and everybody has access to it. They're going to cost me a lot of money because everybody's just going to spin up VMs, and Amazon's going to charge me. Now, so that's how we start off in that sense. But let's say your company doesn't have an AWS account, right? And they called you up. They called me up. Ramsey, we need to start moving our services from on-premises to AWS. So I do my research and I figure out, all right, I'm going to need to go in here and get started. So obviously I always want to get started for free. I click on this and I want to create a free account. As it says here, root user email address. So I would come and put in my email address and I would say, what's the name of the organization? So if I'm creating, I already have one for VDSEs, we the sales engineers. So I would say, put in my email address, and I would put in we the sales engineers here, and I would create. And that what that would do is create a root username and password. And that means you have access to everything. As a root username, as a root user account, you have access to everything from billing, from adding on new accounts, basically all things, which is why this needs to be secure. And the courses that I've taken or that I'm going through, again, the Cloud Guru, I highly recommend. Stefan Marik, could go either way, to be frank. So Stefan Marik, I could go either way, mainly because of the labs. So Cloud Guru, I love the labs. Stefan Marik, you have to follow along, you have to create your own account and do things and worry about, is this going to cost me money? Is this a free tier? Not everything is a free tier, so I just enjoy Cloud Guru more. I'm not affiliated with them. I should be, maybe. But if you want to use them, please go use them. So that's why, because it's so dangerous, you need to do multi-factor authentication. Right? Again, if you go through the courses, I'm not going to do it here, but if you go through the courses, they will show you how to do it. It's not that difficult. And AWS, let's see. Here, I'm going to share my screen. Boom. AWS, root account, multi-factor authentication. And boom, activate MFA on user account, and they will actually tell you how to do it. They'll tell you why, how. A lot of information is available on AWS. What the courses are doing is just taking all this information and condensing them in a way that you can understand. You don't have to take the courses. It's easier, but you don't have to take the courses. So we did that. We enabled multi-factor authentication. Now, the first question that popped in my head once that happens, like, hey, what if Ramsey leaves the company? What would happen to the root access? It's their username, their password, and their username usually is their email address. What happens then? It turns out you can transfer it, so that's good. That's not part of the exam, but just something that I thought about. Now, you're doing your research, and yes, you decide we can move to the cloud, and we can run other services that we're running in our current data center, we can run them in the cloud. But you don't want to give everybody permissions. So even if you're a root user, you probably have to give yourself another account that's not root. But generally speaking, what we're doing here, what you do with, where did it go? So what you do with AWS is, generally speaking, each user can have their own like rights. So let's say Ramsey is one user, Amanda is another. Whoever they have, they have they have access. But Ramsey is engineering, right? And Amanda is HR, and then you have Alan, could be lawyer. I don't know. They could be part of the law team. I'm just coming up with groups here. So, and you can give Ramsey rights, or you can create a group that's engineering and give that rights. By the way, I'm not an engineering group. I would be in sales, but that's just an example. You give engineering the group. Same with Amanda and HR. You create a group and you call it HR. Same with the lawyer. And I just talked about basically two concepts right now. Okay. So you have the permissions, which is basically, so you can create permissions here, which is basically a JSON file. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, which gives them, basically, here we have policies. This is not just permissions, policies. And permissions go within policies. if you go here, let's say um, permissions example. Let's do AWS policy example. And you can go on AWS specifically, and you can see a lot of different policies that they have here. Allows access, like this policy would allow access during a specific range date. So you look at here, it will allow action name, resources, everything. You have access to everything, and conditions they're putting in the date, basically. So that's what a JSON file looks like. This is a little bit more complicated. This will allow IAM users to manage their own credentials on my security credential page, and you can see it could get complicated, basically. But it starts, you have the statement, which is ID, what's the effect, so are you going to allow everything, the actions, what you're allowed to do, and resources is basically on what. And here they're saying on everything. So that's what a policy looks like. So what we're doing here is we're taking these policies. I had permissions here earlier, but they're actually policies. And you saw what they look like. And we can take these policies and give them to Ramsey as an engineer, Leanne. So we can create one policy for Ramsey, one policy for Leanne, and Amanda, and whoever else is in HR, and Alan, whoever else is a lawyer. Or we could say, you know what, Ramsey and Leanne are engineers, and they get the same permissions, the same ability to do things. And we're basically grouping them all together. So when we talk about like individuals, people, these are like users according to AWS. Users. And as we said, we can group them into groups. Now there's one more thing that we didn't talk about yet, which we will, is roles. And I'll talk about that in a second. But what we're doing here is you can group. Instead of giving Ramsey one policy, Leanne one policy, and it becomes a big mess, a big problem, too many things to manage. You can just create groups and instead of giving Ramsey, you give engineering, and then what you're doing is you put Ramsey as part of the engineering group. And now we can just erase users from here, although it could be here, and simply place them under groups and have the users inherit the policies, what you can do and can't do from the groups itself. I mean, you can have many different groups. Right? Like you can have here. We just talked about 3, like engineering. Even engineering can be divided into like DevOps. You can have QA. You can have HR. Although, like in my head, I can't understand why HR would have access to anything within the console. In my mind, like everything they would access is through a web app, which would have public access or maybe VPN access. So I asked ChatGPT, okay, why would an HR person have access to AWS? According to them, there are some situations if they need to manage a specific application. And in my mind, again, I don't know why an HR person would manage. It would be someone in IT, or they need to do some analytics. Again, there would be a web app that would give them the opportunity. If you know why, let me know. I can't think of anything. If you're a human being who's done this before, please comment if you're watching this. And when ChatGPT told me all this information, I said, hey, can you give me the links to where you found this information? And it just gave me the IAM documentation, which I couldn't find any information about why HR would do this. So that's the groups, that's the users. Now we're going to talk about the roles. So according to my research, there are many reasons why you would use roles. But in both Cloud Guru and in Stefan Malik's course, they just talked about roles in the sense of a service using another service, as far as I understand. So let's say you have We haven't talked about any of these yet, but an EC2 instance. An EC2 instance is basically a VM running a certain operating system, which means like you can run a Linux computer, if you will, computer in between quotations, on AWS, and it could be a web app. Like you could be running like an Apache web server on this EC2 instance, and then you have a server, a database running somewhere. So you have MongoDB, whatever, running somewhere in the AWS instance or in the AWS network. And there are there are many things that need to happen, but you need to also give them permission. You need, let's say, you have user login information here, or let's say you're running a website like Airbnb, where you have all sorts of different properties that are being rented out, and these properties have their information stored in a database. And you want the EC2 to be able to access the database to either manipulate data, like to put a reservation, or to, let's say, delete a house from, like, if you're one of the owners, and want to delete the house off of Airbnb, you need to have access to that. That means you need to have an IAM policy between those two. Like you have to have a role, I think. Again, let me know if, double check everything I'm saying and let me know if that's what you understand. So you're connecting these roles together. Now, there's like security groups that need to be involved, but from a basics perspective, that's what I understood from IAM role specifically, according to Stefan Malik and the Cloud Guru course. So, and if you want more information, again, the links will be in the blog. The link to the blog will be in the description below. So, some rules we need to maintain as we're working through this. So, one, principle of least privilege. Principle. Privilege. I hit the wall here. How do you write privilege? Anyways. Okay, good. That means like you want to give each user or each group the least amount of privileges, permissions, access that you possibly can, so that they don't have access to things that they're not supposed to have. So basically, think of, if you're in doubt, remove it and ask. Like, at least that's how it works for me at work. Let's say I'm on Salesforce and I want access to specific places. By default, I don't have many of these accesses. It's not until I reach out to the administrator and say, like, hey, I need access to this. Please give it to me, where they give it to me. But if I don't ask for it, they will never give it. So give the least amount of privileges as possible. 2, inheritance. Inheritance, as they say in France, I think. Users inherit permissions from groups, but not vice versa, right? And 3, don't use root account. Scroll up. Day to day. So even if you have a root account, don't use it on a day-to-day basis. Like, just create it, store it, and only use it when you absolutely need it. So, and one more thing is that I guess is part of the exam. If you want Amazon to have the same username and password that you use for your current organization's access, let's say right now you have a desktop, your computer or your laptop from work that uses your email address as access to give you access to your computer, then you can do the same thing with AWS. It's called IAM Federation, and it uses the SAML standard, which stands for Security Assertion Markup Language, and it's basically used to exchange information and authorize data in between AWS and Active Directory, Windows Active Directory, for example. So that's it. That's it for IAM as far as I know. If you know something else, please let me know below. Again, IAM is trying to solve a problem that AWS created by providing this solution, like the AWS solution in general. So it doesn't have any business value in the sense of like, it saves people money or time. Like an organization, it's actually a bit of a hassle. But people have to like endure this one to gain the benefits of using AWS, which we have discussed in previous places. So that's it. That's it for me for today. Get back to work.